First of all, thank you all for joining our podcast here on the G.U.M Network, where we are just celebrating life and doing all that we can do to be great. Now, in this season, y'all, we are celebrating ourselves, and we're going to have a focus, and the focus is TLC me. And what that means is we're going to love ourselves. We're going to care for ourselves, but it's just not only what you think it is. And today I have two, I'm not even going to call them guests. They're our co-hosts, and they're my friends. So first, let me just say this. These two ladies have allowed me to hijack their time, and I'm really grateful. They put up with me and all of my excitement. So I'm going to introduce to you all my first friend and co-host, Mcilwaine. Michelle, tell us a little bit about what you do and why it's important. Well, not why it's important. We're going to get into that. But first of all, who you are.
I am, as you said, Mcilwaine.
Okay.
So we'll restate the obvious. And secondarily, I love just providing solutions. In this season, I am providing solutions surrounding individuals who need help with their business as well as with their real estate. I've, repositioned myself a few times, but this is feeling real natural, really like purpose and where I'm supposed to be. So yeah, I'm breathing in this space and loving it.
Okay. And then, guys, I know you all know my next co-host, friend / guest, Michelle Singletary. Michelle, first of all, again, thank you for allowing me to hijack your time. Just tell the listeners who I don't know how they would not have heard about you, but just kind of fill us in on who you are and the amazing work that you do.
Well, I write a personal finance column for the Washington Post, which is syndicated across the country, and it mostly focuses on how people can handle their money. And you probably see me on CNN and the major networks. So always talking about personal finance.
Wow, so exciting. Michelle Singletary, when we hear about shopping therapy and all of that, and I have to admit, I have indulged, I wouldn't use the word indulge, but I have taken part and participated in what we call retail therapy. How can people love themselves, and how does that involve personal finances and being accountable and not being in debt? Because come on, most folk have some type of debt outside of like the big debt that we hear about. So tell us more about that. What's your idea?
Well, I mean, there's studies that show that when people shop, certain endorphins get kicked in. So it's like a high. And so people get a high when they shop, just like if you use drugs. I've never used drugs, but I hear you get a high. And so it releases these things that make you feel better. And so it's natural that people would indulge in it because people don't see it as bad as like taking drugs to alter your consciousness. But the problem becomes when you shop and you don't need to be there. You've got debt, or you're not saving for retirement, or you have children and you're not saving for their college fund. You're taking away resources from things that'll be much better for you. And you can get highs from those things too. It just will take a while for that high. I mean, if you can retire before you need a walker, then that's a high.
Okay. I like that. So.
If you can send your kids to college and they can graduate with no debt or little debt, that's a high. But it's a delayed high. But if people really think about it, you work really hard for your money, and you want to be sure that you're putting it in areas that mean something to you.
Wow. So how does one reconcile that? Because I mean, whether it be a high or things that you may quote unquote feel like you need, how do you balance that out?
Well, I think it's just like what you're saying with business and rebranding yourself. You have to have a mission for yourself. Just like a business would have a mission statement, you got to have a mission statement for your money. And so you want to say, okay, I want to retire at a certain age, or I want to pay off debt, or I want to send my kids to college, or I want to help family members. And so once you put that up front, have your mission statement, then for me, it becomes easier to say no to things because you just look at it. Does this meet my mission statement? If it doesn't, then you don't buy it or you don't do it.
Now, what do you think about this? This is a hot topic. We hear about people being equally yoked, right? And I don't mean just the boyfriend and girlfriend, because there is no yoke. I mean, y'all ain't married. But what happens if one partner is a spender and the other one is more frugal?
Well, lots of people end up marrying their money opposites. You are an outgoing person and you marry somebody who's shy. I think it's just a law of nature. You are drawn to what you are not, because then you complement each other. And the same thing happens with money. But it becomes really difficult if you haven't worked out those issues before you get married, if you haven't come up with a plan on how you're going to deal with those differences. So if you're a saver and you marry a spender, you guys got to come up with a plan and let the spender spend a little bit, so that that's their nature, but not so much so that it takes the family down. So it takes a lot of work when you marry your money opposite, and most people aren't willing to put the work in. They think love conquers all, but it really doesn't.
Wow.
That was like that. Yeah. I just became sober. First I was high. I was walking through Ross. I was like, wee, swinging through the aisles and everything. And then this visual came that Michelle just gave, and I'm like, do you want to be out there on the walker? Is that outfit still gonna look cute on the walker? Like she just gave me such a great visual representation.
Right.
So it's like, do you want to be going to work on that walker?
Wow.
Or are you going to keep strolling up and down this Ross aisle? So I might have to pull back on that.
Right.
And then when she started speaking about the money opposite, it's like the same thing. It's like, if you have a goal in mind, it's definitely, how bad do you want it? What are you going to do to get to where you say you want to go? And it's the denied gratification is one of those things that our society is not having. We don't know what that is right now, because everything is just instant. I'm standing in front of the microwave. Hurry up.
Absolutely.
So denying and delaying some things, not even denying, but just delaying some things and saying what is a priority. So this is sobering. So I'm usually the funny girl, but I was just a little bit, I was a little bit punch drunk, because I was like, I want to be on the walker.
So Michelle, though, so is there an appropriate or an acceptable amount of debt? I mean, because people need to go on vacation, right? We're stressed out. They need some vacay, some staycay, all kind of K, right? So how does one balance that out? I mean, do you wait until you halfway on the walker? Like, well, I'm not on the walker yet. So how does that all work?
I believe that there's no level of acceptable debt that you should operate from zero debt and then work your way from there. It's hard to buy a house without debt, and many people can't buy a car. But short of that, you should just have a zero-sum game, that you should not have debt, because debt limits you. And certainly people are going to take on debt, but for things like vacations and eating out and clothes, things that you might not even remember 6 months from the time you take on the debt, because you just really want to try to save up for something. And so, it's probably going to sound a lot harsh to people, but I don't think you should take a vacation if you have to use debt to do that. You need to save up for it. And you shouldn't take a vacation if you have debt, because people will save up for a vacation while they have credit card debt, and then they'll say, well, I saved for the vacation. And I'm not really impressed, because you've got this debt out there. And that's your debtor, that's your creditor's money you spending to be in Aruba, and that's not cool.
Your creditor's money. Bars.
Oh,
okay, shots fired.
Watch out. So that's your creditor's money. So the fact that Visa has more money than I do is not important if I owe Visa.
Well,
and I want to go on vacation.
Yeah, well, Visa has more money because people got debt, right? Yeah, so you are supplementing them. Yeah, I mean, you just need to
go get a job at Visa, right?
I mean, I just think people should operate out of their authentic self, and that means not carrying it. If you've got debt, pay it off. Work to pay it off before you treat yourself. It's like when you talk to kids, like eat your food and veggies before you get your dessert. It's the sort of same thing.
I like what you said about be your authentic self, because really to be free.
That's right.
Like that authenticity is associated with being free. So am I really free on vacation when I got to come back and figure out how to pay these?
And that's depressing. And it can actually cause you to tailspin into worse depression or whatever that thing was that you were trying to escape.
Right. That's right. Exactly right. It's the same thing with drugs. Like, I've never done drugs. First of all, I would never spend the money on them. But if the high could last forever, then sure. Right. But I never saw. How do I put this? It never made sense to me to do drugs because the high don't last. And so you spend all this money on something that don't last. And that just never made sense to me. And it's the same thing with, using debt to go on vacation or buy clothes. It just doesn't make sense to me because it doesn't last.
So, no, you talk about it being an addiction similar to like drugs. Would you recommend or have you recommended therapy for someone who really spends like that? Yeah. It's unfortunate. I have a buddy of mine, and she has a buddy, right? And he spent something like $30,000 in Vegas. And I don't know how he thought he was going to conceal that. I mean, it's like 30 grand. It's like their savings, and it has really caused such a problem in their marriage. $30K.
Yeah, that would cause a lot of issues in my marriage too. I can't say what I would do to my husband because it's illegal, but it definitely I would say almost all of us probably need to be in therapy because I'm a big believer in therapy. But absolutely, spending that kind of money so recklessly, there is something else going on. It's not even about the gambling. There is something fundamentally wrong with someone who would jeopardize their marriage, their life, their financial situation to gamble like that. And so we can look at it and go like, oh, that rascal or that, but for me, I see somebody in trouble.
Yeah. Wow. So for that person, just in general, that is something that really needs to be dealt with. I can imagine how he felt afterwards. I mean, thinking about it like a, drug person who's addicted to drugs and the crash, if you will.
Yeah. I'm sure the wife is suffering as well.
Yeah, she's devastated.
And they both probably need to get to counseling, very soon. And anybody listening who feel like they can't stop shopping, that it's like you can't even go. I don't know. I don't go to the store but a couple times a year. But if you can't not go shopping, there's a problem there. Like every weekend you're at the store, at the mall. Why? I mean, that something's wrong.
So true. And I was listening to a couple of guys who have an amazing podcast. It's called the Roommates Podcast. So shout out to Hafiz and Chris over there at Roommates Podcast. But they had an episode and it talked about building character. And even in this kind of whole self-love movement, if you don't have any character, then it's kind of all for naught. And so I think about that even as we're thinking about being responsible with our money and all of that. How can we treat our character? How can we indulge character development? And sometimes we put such an emphasis on, well, I need to do me and all of that. I need to treat myself and love myself, which is the truth. But what am I learning in this season? How am I being sharpened? How am I becoming more like Christ reflection? And I don't want to cheat myself out of that, thinking that, okay, well, I'm going to love myself, but maybe I'm loving myself by learning lessons, by becoming more like Christ, and building character. Like that's not a bad thing. And sometimes we can be self-indulge thinking that we're loving ourselves, and so that's where I think tough love comes from. And so what I hear you telling us is that sometimes it's tough love. I mean, it's like building muscle and become a better person, a more fit person. So Michelle, give us some tips. Where can somebody start from? Let's say if they're really in debt, like outside of the therapy level, but what are some of the things that people can do to, one, enjoy their life, but also still save money and build for their future?
I think we have to redefine what it means to treat myself, because we define it as buying something, going on vacation, spending money. But basically, you could sit at home on your porch and just look at nature, and that's treating yourself. Being still, that doesn't cost any money. If you got a dog, walking your dog or taking walks. I mean, we have to just redefine what, I mean, people get so hostile when I will say things like, you don't deserve a vacation if you're in debt, and people just go ballistic. But what I'm saying is, I'm not saying don't coming out
right? What? I don't deserve vacation.
Right.
Don't you
because
know what I've been
don't
through?
if you have debt. But I'm not saying don't take time for yourself. But does it have to cost money? I mean, there was a time in our history, especially, in the, lower middle income, where people didn't do the kind of things that we did.
True.
It doesn't mean that, certainly it'd be great if we could all see the world and go places. But I think we have to be able to say, I'm okay just sitting here reading a book, just taking a walk. I mean, some of my best times is just being on my back porch and just looking at the trees. I mean, I just sit there and look and listen to nature. Just listen to sounds of nature. That's treating yourself, because we're so busy. You talk to people, and what's the one thing that they don't have enough of? It's not shoes, it's not clothes, unless you're a shopaholic, but it's time. We always complaining we don't have time. So steal some time, and that's a way to treat yourself. And that doesn't cost anything.
Wow. When you said that, it made me think about how some folk just are not settled in their spirits. It's like sitting at a home is somehow a downgrade. I'm like, you on your walker, Grandma, and I'm gonna need for you to come home. But seriously, where home is a step down, where we always got to be out and partying or out being seen or on the gram. Also old folk on the gram, like, what you know about being on the gram, auntie? But just always out there and not having peace within themselves and not being content with their own life, and they're trying to carve out or create this life that's not authentic to them.
I like, once again, what Michelle Singletary just said. It's like they call you the finance or the debt. I'm a debt defeater.
Yes.
So the debt defeater. But I'm hearing you, and it's like I'm hearing more and more like, guess what? I'm a drug therapist. Like, she's getting us off this drug called debt.
Yeah, that's
good.
Yeah.
She's getting us up off of this drug, because like the reality of finding peace. Like what's this addiction all about? And like, addiction comes in all shapes and forms. So when I hear you talking about, how to defeat the debt, that's like, it's surreal. It sounds a little bit sobering, but guess what? If you didn't have the debt, you wouldn't need the vacation so much, and you feel like the vacay just sitting. You know what I'm saying? You're not working 100 hours a week to get the car, to get the girl, to get the house, because what? None of that was authentic. You're using these artificial and synthetic means to achieve happiness. That I mean, like, I heard all that. She didn't say all that, but I'm telling you, I heard that, like, okay, there's something artificial that I have to be at the store every weekend.
Right.
There's something that I'm, I got to keep plumping up. I got to do some injections in my lip. But maybe I'm doing it by way of just buying some new lip gloss every week. Because I'm medicating something.
Of course. So, Michelle, who are some of the folk that we should have around us? Because everybody may not have access to a financial planner, or they may not have anybody in their family who's ever really been good with their money. It's like, well, we just gonna have debt and we gonna die, and that's it. We go charge, we go swipe, and it's a lifestyle, a culture, in fact. So where can people start? I always hear about people should have a spiritual advisor or pastor, a person that works them out physically. But what kind of team can people surround themselves with? Like, is it a good friend who may be good with money, or a coworker? What kind of resource team should people assemble around themselves?
I mean, it depends on what you're trying to do. If you are a higher net individual or you got a lot of money and you're trying to figure out how to invest it, fee-only financial planner is a good place to start. I mean, your team involves, you got to have somebody to help you with your taxes if you're not good at that. Maybe a financial planner. And then you definitely should have a will, so you have to have a lawyer. And then if you're in debt, you can go to a nonprofit consumer credit counseling agency. and emphasis on nonprofit, consumer credit counseling. You look for those words, and basically some groups that don't charge a lot of money to help you with budgeting, and they can help put you on a debt plan. People can go to debtadvice.org, which is run by a national organization that represents nonprofit consumer counseling agencies. And that's a good way to start. Check your community, check your church if they have a financial program. You want to try to find a program that is run or taught by someone that doesn't have a stake in what you do. So just be careful about programs run by people who sell insurance or investments. Not to say that you're not going to consult them as professionals, but in terms of teaching, you want somebody who's unbiased, who doesn't have, it's like when you buy a car, most people the only people they consult is the person selling them the car. Yeah. That's crazy. You want to, do some of your independent research. You don't, when you buy a house, you only talk to the real estate person in the bank. Well, you want to sort of do some research on your own. You definitely want to use those professionals. That's what they're there for. But they shouldn't be the only people that you talk to.
Wow, that's good. So, Michelle, what are you doing these days? Where can we find your column? How can we follow you on social media? All that good stuff.
Well, I'm on Facebook and Twitter. Twitter mostly. It's at Singletary M. Facebook, Michelle Singletary. And then always can go to the Washington Post website, WashingtonPost.com. If you type in my name, take my name, it'll take you right to my bio page. And you can look at all my columns that run every week.
You do a chat as well. Tell us a little bit about the chat that you do.
Every Thursday from noon to 1, I have a live chat so people can come in and ask me financial questions, and I answer it within the hour. It's a very lively chat. We discuss all kinds of issues of the day. I really love it. It's fun. It's a fun way for me to interact with people and see what people's concerns are.
Wow, that's hot, Michelle. And Michelle, thank you.
Michelle and Michelle.
Michelle 1 and Michelle 2.
Absolutely. Here all season long, talking and sharing about how we can give ourselves the necessary TLC that is needed to grow and to thrive and to be all that God has called us to be. So we're excited, guys. Check us out. Visit us online. That's www.thegumnetwork.com. And, we're on Roku. We are on Apple, iTunes, Spotify. And, if you guys want us to give you guys a shout out, go ahead and check us out. And go ahead, press that contact button and see how we can work together. See if you have any show ideas. We'd love to hear from you. Michelle Mcilwaine, where can people find you at, and what are you up to?
It's going to be Michelle M. And then also they have Elite Home Life. So it's at Elite Home Life and Michelle M.
Exciting.
For most of your social media platforms.
Okay. All right, guys. Well, thank you for, again, these two, Michelle and Michelle, for indulging a sister. I appreciate it. And for our listeners, thank you for spending some time with us. And until next time, guys, we'll see you on the flip side.